Welcome to Perspectives Matter, the McCuistion program, where we continue talking about things that matter with people who care. Production of the program is made possible in part by donations from individual viewers, grants, and supporters of the Foundation for Responsible Television.
I'm Jim Falk, and today we're continuing our discussion on homelessness with a close look at After 8 to Educate, which was founded in 2017 here in Dallas to tackle an exceptionally vulnerable segment of the homeless, unsheltered youth. It is estimated just within the Dallas Independent School District that there are over 4,000 students who meet the federal definition of homeless. Here in the studio, I'm joined by After 8's founder and chairman, Jorge Baldor, and its executive director, Ara Grimaldo. Jorge Baldor is known as a fierce advocate of education and a successful entrepreneur. His dedicated work and generosity have made possible several projects and organizations aimed at empowering others, particularly underserved youth. Ara Grimaldo joined After 8 in June 2021. Earlier in her career, she held positions at Mothers Against Drunk Driving and Big Brothers and Big Sisters. Thanks to both of you for being here. It's great to be. I'm really looking forward to this discussion, especially Jorge, because I remember, God, it must have been 2016 or so. You and I were having breakfast and talking about various projects you were involved in. Right. And I never saw you be as committed as you were to After 8 to Educate. What got you interested in doing something like this?
Well, it really took a couple of years to get to the point where the decision was made to move forward with this project. I had noticed in the spring there was an article in the Dallas Morning News about education, and someone had been received a valedictorian recognition at one of the schools that had been homeless, and so it really brought the story to light. Mentioned there's about 3,000 or 4,000 in Dallas that were facing homelessness, so I thought that was astonishing. And in this city, in this area, in this region, that's really an issue. And so it kind of stuck with me. I talked to a couple of people in my world about it and figured out that in high school, they had that same experience. One's an international speaker now, and the other is an attorney for a large law firm. I had no idea. And so I'm thinking that, if the few people that I have mentioned it to, I'm already hearing that, it must be a bigger issue. A couple years later, in the spring, again, another series of stories, and the number's the same, 3,500 to 4,000. I'm thinking no one's doing anything about it. So let's tackle this.
Jorge, this center has been a part of your life since 2017 when you first saw the need. You've been here hundreds of times. What emotions do you feel when you come?
Well, Jim, every time you come, you see a different face, you do see a different expression, but the story is the same. It's the impact that these kids are having in their lives because of the work that's being done, as this is the last of the frontline service for kids that really have no other options.
And as we walked through the center today, I've seen so much inspirational art, but one that really strikes me is right here.
That's right. This image is really talking about the possibilities and how we want each person here to develop to their potential, and the sky's the limit. So you have really the ladder symbolizing how you can just reach as far as your capabilities are, but you can't do it alone, and none of us can. So we work together to find out what are their specific needs, and so that's one of the things that's different about this center is that it's really based on individual mental health needs and development in areas that are designed within this structure, within whether it's the lighting or the size of the rooms or the programming. All of it is really designed with individual needs.
Did you ever talk to any of the young people to get their perspective before you made this commitment?
Absolutely. It's definitely a
bottom
up.
So, how do you do it?
Well, one is we started exploring who was in this space locally, statewide, nationally, but then also, finding a steering committee that was really the most effective. We had two. One which we had the adults, which were about 40 members. A third of them, had experienced homelessness in their youth. But the one that really had the most impact was a youth steering committee that we formed, half the students from Hockaday and half from Thomas Jefferson High School. All of the kids on the Thomas Jefferson side had experienced homelessness, and so their experience was firsthand, and that was really impactful. They came up with a lot of suggestions that got incorporated into what we're doing. Things we have a podcast room.
Where are we right now?
The podcast room, the sound studio.
And how often is it used?
Well, it's going to be used every month. We actually will be launching a podcast with the youth, and they'll share their lived experiences.
And do you have a name for it?
Not yet. It's still in the works. We actually will get the youth to be involved in the entire process, including the name of what the podcast will be called.
And so different youth will be involved with it?
Correct. So it's all youth focused. There will be a coach that helps them throughout the process, but entirely, lived experiences and the youth providing hope to other youth that may be experiencing homelessness.
So during the last hour, we've seen the podcast room, we've seen other inspirational rooms, and I'm walking out and I see this, which I only expected to see really in a museum.
Right. So this is actually a great idea from kids from Thomas Jefferson High School, a local high school here in Dallas. So a lot of them don't even know what it is. It's an antique phone.
Don't tell me that.
And if the kids actually on here, if you dial the number that's located next to the picture, they share lived experiences of their experience with homelessness. And so they provide hope. So anytime we have someone come here, they can just dial the number and hear an inspiring message, and that's all they need that day sometimes.
They wanted a way to express themselves, and this was something that's unique and innovative, and so we have that. The rooms where the beds are, they're not numbered, they're lettered, and so that's a little bit more personalized. They really wanted art. They really wanted a way to express and find positive reinforcements through that. And you see throughout the center that that's really been a central part of what we're doing. So they wanted a feel that's different.
So Ara, tell me, when somebody arrives at the center, what's the intake, if you want, registration?
Yeah, so they come in, they do just, an intake through one of our digital formats. Once that's done, then we meet with them.
So you're assuming right there that somebody already has access to digital, or when they arrive
When
at
they
the center?
arrive at
Okay.
the center, correct. So they come in, they, sign in, do the intake. It's like a 3-5 minute piece of paper, not anything in depth, because usually it takes 3 to 4 times to really get them to open up and figure out what's next. But with that helps us identify what's immediate right now, because it could be that they need housing. Well, most of them come in housing, but it could be also that they need just a warm meal, just basic necessities.
So what are the services that you provide? Because you have if I understand it right, you have a shelter and then you have a drop-in center. Is that right?
Correct.
Explain the difference.
Right, so the shelter, there's 35 beds, and that's emergency housing and transitional living. And on the drop-in side, they can come in and just do that drop-in and get immediate services, whether it's a warm meal, take a bath, get hygiene products, and then from that, those are kind of on a macro level what we offer.
Are those enough beds, George?
Oh, there's never enough beds. That's this is the huge problem, not just locally but nationally. But those beds equate to about 250 youth a year. And so one of the main premises of the program that we have is family reunification. And so, we're looking to find alternatives for them to find a more stable, long-term. The drop-in center is really more like a triage. And that's really where youth 14 to 21, there's no requirement as far as being DISD students or even in school at all. We really don't question what got them into the door. We're just glad they're there. And so we provide, emergency services, immediate service, whether it's a hot shower or meal, whether they really want to talk to a counselor at that time or someone that's, going to give longer care. About, I would say 3/4 of them, they come in, they get their energy back, they get, maybe a clothing exchange, wash clothes, and then we don't see them again. They're not ready or committed to do a program or to get involved in other than just immediate needs.
You may not ask them right when they walk in how they became homeless,
That's
but,
right.
but I'm going to ask you, what are some of the reasons?
It's probably about 1/3 of the kids that we find that are homeless and have been identified that are because they came out to their parents and the parents lock them out the doors. So this is not the preconceived ideas that we have of social economic circumstances. This is just simply, moral decisions on the parents' part. The other group is that's about the same percentage of the population are just families that just really don't understand where the resources are, maybe coping skills. So maybe a mom has 5 kids. There's enough food for 3, so 2 of them get locked out.
You have a special relationship with the ISD, is that correct?
Right.
We do.
How does that work? And does that mean that if I'm a high schooler from Richardson or Plano that I cannot avail myself to your services?
It depends on which service. See, one of the things that when we started studying this nationally, the model that really made the most sense was in California, and they had it in a very small scale. But there are 2 components in dealing with youth homelessness. One is the drop-in center. Again, more immediate needs, more at the moment care. Then the longer term, which is the shelter component. So this model was having both under one roof. We hadn't seen that before. And so we took that idea and really put it on steroids. We have a 25,000 square foot former elementary school by the Cotton Bowl. We have access by DART rail, DART bus. So it's really an ideal location for what we're doing. And part of the building is separated. So the agreement we have with the ISD, because it is a facility owned by DISD, that
The building is owned by
the
DISD.
building is owned by DISD. So we were responsible for all the renovations, which we took it to a core, new electrical, plumbing, new roof, HVAC. It's a brand new component, but the building is there. So we raised the few $1 million it took to get it to that.
What was the total
point.
cost?
It was about $3.5 million, and then we had a little bit more that was, I guess, pro bono that the construction companies and others involved with it. And in doing the fundraising for that, I was always told, the last 10% are really the hardest to get. I can assure you the last 5% is the hardest to get. We have about $130,000 debt.
How did COVID affect your operations? Probably made it pretty hard to get the building going, I guess.
Oh,
but-
absolutely.
Right,
Yeah, funding dried. Yeah, for sure.
What about the operations and how the youth were served since essentially schools went remote for too long?
Right. Well, that definitely heightened how many youth are now, unhoused. We say the 4,000, but that's just self-disclosed. So I'm sure it's 3,000, or 3 times that amount. And we see it at the center, at the drop-in now, that youth are just coming left and right. I mean, we started with about 100 youth last year, and now we're tripled, where we're seeing about 19,000 services were provided last year. And as of this first quarter, almost 12,000. So you could see just the difference in the data that.
But you think COVID has something
Oh,
to
for
that?
sure. Yeah. Because now we're just seeing more, we get family units that come in. Like George mentioned, the Oregon, it was 2 sisters that came through the drop-in side. Where, we're just seeing, and every youth is very different, but they always mention either a family member is unemployed, inflation. Now, instead of buying, a milk, or eggs, they try to figure out, do I buy the eggs or do I buy the milk? So it's, just economy. COVID has definitely had a detriment on this population.
So most of these kids, the school was the only stability in their
Right.
life.
Sure.
And so the federal definition of homelessness is the same whether you're couch surfing for a month before you get restable or your next paycheck, or whether you're under a bridge and living in a car. And so what we find is that most of the organizations that are in the homeless youth realm really focus on those that aren't couch surfing. Because as we were told by one of the organizations as we were going through the research is, the others are just too hard to deal with. And so basically what you find, you get the same grant money for working with someone that's, dealing in a couch surfing situation, but our focus are those really that are in a more severe, under a bridge is their reality, still finding their way to go to school, and those are the ones that we're really putting our focus on.
I want to get back to this number because I'd heard around 4,000, which didn't really seem right to me because they say that Dallas has about 4,500 homeless people.
Right.
So the youth, you're saying are how many?
Oh, at least 3 or 4 times that 4,000 number. Because what happened was...
Why? Well, prove it to me.
Right. So, during COVID, we were able to see a lot more people coming and self-identifying as homeless. There are no benefits to doing that for a school year, in a regular pre-COVID school year, because there were really no services that were offered to them differently. But teachers, counselors were trained on how to spot, kids that are in that situation, and we're able to talk to them, and those are the ones that said it.
So you get referrals also from teachers?
100%.
sometimes?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah. And part of the programming that we did, particularly pre-COVID, was with counselors, with the principals, to letting you know the signs so that they can tell, where some of the issues that you can tell are happening. That's because these kids, they survive by just blending in, and we don't know they're there. That's why when you talk about these numbers, these thousands of kids, most people are just astonished. But if you walk through downtown, they're there. You can find them in the bus stations. They're on Dart Bus 20, the 24-hour McDonald's. That's where you're going to find them. But you find them also in places like along Jefferson Avenue, for example. Behind each of the shops, there are the trash cans that you normally see with a fence around them. When those trash cans or those trash receptacles are moved up about 2 feet away from the back of that, that's full of kids behind there.
So, George, how do these kids find out about what the services are? Do you have volunteers or staff that go out to some of these areas?
Yeah, I mean, one of them is, like George mentioned, before COVID, they were going to the schools and presenting information about the services. But now what we're doing also is 4 times a year we do street outreach, when we're actually walking the streets and providing hygiene packs and services like flyers with information. Also word of mouth. The youth, that's really what, one comes in and they go back and tell their friends.
That's right.
So that's been
It
one
is.
of our avenues.
We just, on a prior show, we talked to Tracy Kidder and Dr. Jim O'Connell, who are doing such good work in Boston. And one of the things they talked about is how many people who are homeless have suffered sexual violence as a child. Do you find that here too?
We do actually. The statistics for the Dallas area, that if a child is homeless for more than 48 hours, they're being picked up either for the sex trade or for drug trafficking. And so there are people that are going to those places that are frequently where you can find these youth frequently, and then they're either taking into one of those 2 trades. And so you have about 48 hours to get them into a facility, a program, something, or else they're going to be picked up on the street, and that's going to be their experience.
I know you can't tell us the names of anyone, but give me a good description of, say, somebody who has been homeless, suffered on the streets, and has come into your shelter.
I could tell you a story from just this past Friday. We had a youth come in who was about to jump off a bridge. Someone found her. She's currently pregnant, has a 2-year-old daughter.
How old is she?
She is 20 years old.
20, you said.
20. And she shared that mom, chronic homeless, never had a stable home. Dad passed away when she was really young. And so someone actually just saw her about to jump off the bridge and said, hey, I know a place I can take you to. And I am getting emotional just talking about
that's okay.
it.
Yeah.
So she came to the center. Luckily, this man found her. And so we were able to stabilize her, get her into the appropriate care, which is getting her medical evaluation, psychiatric help. And so now she knows, though, that not only that man that found her is going to be part of her support system, but us as well. Because she's like, my mom, we lived in our cousin's home and then just back and forth. So when she said, I have no permanent home, that test is what after it is. Now we're like, you can use our address. We'll help you get your birth certificate, get those critical documentations, get you back in school, because she dropped out in the 11th grade. So that day she just said it was better to take her life because she just didn't feel like she had a support system. And so, and that's just one case. And so we're seeing multiple, just different cases. So we're not like your cookie cutter. We're definitely going.
I mean, you take children as young as 14.
Correct.
What happens if someone's 12 and knocks on your door?
Well, there are services that do that, and obviously we stabilize them and get them to a proper service, because even over the 21, it's the same thing.
Right.
You have issues that go beyond the age ranges that we're focusing on. But as Ara mentioned, one of the things that's different about our program is that we're youth-centered and youth-centric, so it's individual what their needs are. One of the things that we did prior to building the center is understanding what are the important components, particularly mental health, and that is essential. And if you're not resolving the mental health issues, if you're not working on that, the rest of it really falls apart.
So who are you working with on that?
So we're working with Parkland, we're working with Children's, we're working with a lot of different organizations that specifically do that. UTA, we work with their mental health capacity department as well. But one of the things that we've learned is that all these youth, not only are they dealing with typical adolescence issues, but all of them are dealing with abandonment. And abandonment shows in a lot of personal and professional relationships. And so as we designed the center, this is something that's very innovative, we designed it for the 3 stages of dealing with abandonment. So some days you're going to be in your own private room and you want to just be alone. Some days you're going to be open to being the open environment where you have the interaction with 30, 40 people. And some days you can deal with maybe 5 or 10 people at a time. So the center has those type of spaces specifically designed for them and what their needs are as they're going through that. Typically shelters have a cookie cutter program that says, here's our program and here are the 10 steps you're going to take.
Well, that's, you talked about you still have $130,000 in debt.
We do.
What is your operating budget?
We're about $600,000 annually, and so we're dealing, as Ara mentioned, about 19,000 services last year with that. We have a small staff to do that.
How large is your staff, Ara?
It's 13 of us.
And then you have volunteers
Correct.
too.
Volunteers and interns, like George mentioned, from UTA and different universities come and support us and do like the social work piece or help us with intake.
So what type of volunteers? I suspect there are a lot of people there who would like to help you.
Oh, well, we love volunteers.
Make your pitch.
Well, thank you. Yeah, because we definitely, a big percentage of the work we do is through community partners and the volunteers that come in. And so there's a food pantry, so people do drives for us. We have a clothing closet like George mentioned, and so like getting undergarments donated, sometimes we run out of those. So if people want to come in, do drives for us, and then bring in the items and help us, organize these 2 pantries. We also have a community garden, so if you love to garden, we have that. Also, just working with the youth, playing board games. We have a partnership with an organization at SMU that actually the youth come in, bring pizza, and play board games with them. So we want to have more meals every day. So if that's another avenue, you're going to host a pizza night, a taco night.
So what's your website?
www.after8toeducate.com.
George, given the uniqueness of this center and what you all have accomplished, are you finding other cities and municipalities in Texas coming or from elsewhere in the country?
From all over. I know George mentioned prior to me joining After 8, there were several organizations, and we just had Kansas City about 2-3 weeks ago come in, and they want to duplicate this model. So
they had a collaboration that they're working on between the city and the county and the school district to transform an old building, that's a historic building in Kansas City, into a center just like ours.
We talked about the 20-year-old woman who thankfully you were able to take off the bridge. Yep. George, I know how many people you have helped go to college, find jobs. Tell me a good story of somebody you've worked with at After 8.
Yeah, I think one of the ones that sticks out the most to me is his name is Paul. One of the first students that really got the job training, was able to find a job through the efforts that the center was able to provide. When he gets his first paycheck, he goes and buys 2 pair of socks, one for himself, and the other he comes back and donates and says to the center, I know everyone needs a pair of socks. So he really epitomizes what we find is that most of these kids in that situation want to help and give back, and that's what we've seen a lot.
Nick, I'm just so appreciative that you could join us today.
I've been coming to the center over a year, and the staff is really hands-on. They help with what you need. You come in, take showers, and you have to be in there doing something constructive with your life and not just playing around, because staff really wants you to come out successful once you become a certain age.
And you told me a little while ago that you're going to be starting college in just a month or 2.
Yes, the center, they've been really helpful with me and helping me get through college and everything. I have my ID, which I've been working really hard on, and I'm soon about to be in college once that semester comes around.
Child Protective Services really did an intervention in your family, didn't they?
Yes. When I was 3, my mom abused me and my little brother, and we ended up in CPS, got separated, and that's when the teachers called CPS and they took us away. And I've seen my mom off and on because at certain times they didn't have nowhere for us to go, And so they gave me back to my mom, but she wasn't a very good parent, fitting parent for us to be around. So they kept on taking us, having us jump house to house. So I haven't seen my brother since.
Do you know where he is?
At the moment, I do not. I wish I did, because I would be that constructive brother to take him back in and to let him know that I'm here and I care.
You know, there's an expression, pay it forward. And in a sense, you've been a beneficiary of the generosity of a lot of people as well as the wonderful staff here. How are you, after you get that college degree, going to pay it forward?
I mean, I want to give a shout out to Fantasy Harris once I get into college. I just wanted to give my gratitude and say thank you, because I never thought that I would come this far.
What are we missing on this? What do you want people to really understand about, one, youth homelessness, and what is needed?
Well, I think honestly, I'll go first, and then Ara, because Ara's the day-to-day on this front line. But the reality of it is just realizing that this is real, and this is a problem not only locally but nationally, that it's not being addressed. And I think people are always expecting someone else is going to take care of these kids, and there is no one else. There's no other center. There's no place for these kids to be. So we really are counting on the community to step in and help us meet this front line.
Is there a safety net being provided by the federal government in any way? No. Amazing.
Yep.
I want to thank you both for being with us. Really, congratulations, and for the important work that you're both doing. And I hope people take a chance to look at your website. Certainly, After 8 is inspiring proof of what can be achieved with vision, leadership, and a true spirit of collaboration. While the goal of eliminating homelessness is one of the worthiest of causes, it is especially meaningful when children and high school students, who, as we have heard, are most at risk of falling into a cycle of poverty, sexual abuse, and potentially criminal behavior. We hope that our series on homelessness has opened eyes and really stimulated ongoing discussion as we continue to talk about things that matter with people who care. I'll see you next time.
For more information and to engage with our program, call 214-394-6794 or email nikki@nikkimcquistion.com. Visit our website at McCuistionTV.com or our YouTube channel, McCuistion TV. Thanks for watching.